Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Lee Jardine and I'm the host for this meeting, and for the purposes of this meeting I'm also the Democratic Services Officer. I'm here assisting the committee with the use of technology. I'll have no control of the meeting and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the chair. The meeting is currently being live streamed on YouTube and a recording will be made available afterwards. Everyone who is indicating they're attending has now joined and the meeting will be logged. Shortly I'll hand over to the chair, but first, introductions. Can I ask the attendees to introduce themselves, starting with the members? Councillor Annison.
Councillor Tony Annison.
Councillor Crouch. Councillor Crouch is having some technical issues, but Councillor Crouch is on the meeting. Councillor Daniels.
Councillor Daniels.
Councillor Granger.
Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Greeny.
Councillor Ian Greeny.
Councillor Heaslip.
Hello, Councillor Michael Heaslip. I'll be chairing the meeting when we get going.
Thank you. Councillor Horsley.
Afternoon, Councillor Daniel Horsley.
Councillor Kirkbride.
Afternoon, Councillor Kirkbride.
Councillor McCarran Holmes.
Good afternoon, Connie McCarran Holmes.
Councillor Scott.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paul Scott.
Thank you. Now I'll move on to the officers. Nick Hardy.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Hardy. I'm the Head of Strategy, Policy and Performance.
Brendan Carlin.
Good afternoon, I'm Brendan Carlin. I'm the Head of Programmes and Projects.
Ian Hind.
Hello, I'm Ian Hind. I'm the Policy Officer for Scrutiny and Partnerships.
Barbara Watson.
Hello, I'm Barbara Watson. I'm Procurement Officer.
Ernie Davidson.
Good afternoon, Ernie Davidson, Assistant Business Development Manager.
Alex Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, I'm Alex Fitzgerald, Policy Manager for Corporate Performance and Information.
Thank you. We also have a consultant on the line, Graham Harrison.
Good afternoon, my name is Graham Harrison. I've been supporting Ernie and his team researching and preparing the waste policy that we'll be discussing shortly.
Thank you very much. We also have our Section 151 Officer, Catherine Nicholson, on the line if required. So thanks very much for all your introductions. If a vote is required, the chair will ask myself as Democratic Services Officer to go through each member alphabetically. Each member will reply with their name, and I vote for, against, or abstain. So thanks for that. I'll now hand you over to the chair to formally start the meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. The first item I want to consider is the agenda, and from the chair make some suggestions as to the order of items on the agenda, if I may. I'm suggesting that we take the second bullet point of item 13. That's the report of the future waste task and finish group, at the same time as item 6 on the agenda, which is the draft waste and recycling policy, because essentially we're talking about very similar related issues. Is that okay with members? Put your hand up if you disagree. The second change I would like to make is at the Strategic Commissioning Procurement Strategy Action Plan, item 10. I'd like to defer that to the third bullet point of agenda item 13, where again we have a report on a strategy coming from officers and consideration of the procurement task and finish group, which is also making recommendations on things that are relevant to strategic commissioning procurement. So it seems sensible, in consultation with my co-chair, to deal with those items together and structure the agenda in that way. Is that okay? Right, in that case then,
Chair, if I can, sorry, Chair, can I just come in at that moment? I take it when you mean we're moving the strategic commissioning report to the last bullet point. That's going to be dealt with before the final bullet point. Is that correct? Because the final bullet point is going to go into part 2.
Yeah.
That's clear.
That's my intention. And there's another angle on that I'll come to in a minute.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm hoping that we'll be able to deal with the strategic commissioning procurement strategy first, without going into part 2. But if it becomes obvious to the chair at that point that the things that are relevant to that from the procurement task and finish group report, it may well be we'll have to move that discussion into part 2. But that will be a matter for the person who's chairing the meeting at the time, which we'll come to at item 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so minutes, and before I ask people to approve the correct record of the minutes on the 16th of October, I would like to suggest that there's an amendment to minute 121, because we did actually at that meeting, and I remember because I proposed it on my budget task and finish group, sorry, my pandemic task and finish group report, that we make a report to the executive making recommendations as to the resourcing of the public health functions, and particularly environmental health within the council for the future, because our environmental health people were being run ragged by the demands of the pandemic. That actually happened, by the way, and the executive accepted that recommendation. So I'd just like to see that amendment to minute 121. The wording is actually the wording that has actually appeared on the executive agenda papers, but didn't actually appear in our minutes. So it appeared to come from nowhere, but actually should have been in our minutes. Are there any other points on the minutes, pages 5 to 8? Please shout up. Well, please stick your hands up. Otherwise, we can take it that they're approved as a correct record. If anybody objects to that, please put the hand up.
Chair, just before I do that, sorry, just a clarification on your point there. So you're moving an amendment, which is yeah. Can I just have someone seconding that, please, as well? Just shout out if you want to.
I think Malcolm's waving his hand. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. Thanks. That's great. Thanks very much. I'll make that amendment.
Is that amendment agreed? Anybody objects? Put the hand up. No. Amended minutes agreed. Anyone object? Put the hand up. No. Okay. I think you can take it. They're agreed.
Thank you, Chair.
Lee. Okay. Next item is apologies for absence. Have we any for the record?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from absence received from Councillor Bell. Thank you.
Right. Just Councillor Bell. Okay. Declarations of interest. And can I kick off? I don't think technically it's a declaration of interest as such, but there is a provision in the Constitution as to scrutiny that no one can be involved in scrutinising a decision they were actually part of. So when we come to the item on the consideration of the report of the procurement task and finish group, then I'm debarred from taking part in that. It's not actually an interest, but I am actually debarred from taking part in that. So I'll be vacating the chair and leaving the meeting and handing over to my co-chair for that. That last item on the agenda. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay. Questions. Have we any questions, Lee?
No questions received, Chair.
And no members of the public who want to ask a question. Okay.
That's correct. No public participation.
So
Thank
no
you.
public participation either. Right. Let's come to the item 6 on the agenda, then the draft waste and recycling policy. And bear in mind, we're going to consider, along with that, if we can, the report of the future waste task and finish group. So I understand we're going to have a presentation on that kicked off by Ernie, And I would like members, if they would, to bear in mind that while it's nice to sit and hear presentations, and what we're actually supposed to do is draw some conclusions from them and make some recommendations from them and come to some resolution about reports we might receive. So bear in mind, as you listen to the report, what do you want to pick out of it and pick up as a recommendation or a resolution? That okay? Right, I welcome Ernie Davidson, Assistant Business Development Officer in, I can't remember which service you're in now. They've all seem to have changed over the last 12 months, but please, Ernie, fire away with your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Graham Harrison, who's been, as Graham suggested before, been helping the team on this matter. We're here to provide this brief overview of the draft waste policy. So you just bear with me, and I'll try and get the slide sharing the screen on the slideshow here. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Is that okay for everybody?
It's showing as part of it's
Yeah.
not showing us in the slideshow format. It's showing as part of we're basically seeing your screen rather than a slideshow, but that's okay.
Is that okay?
Just go to slideshow, Ernie, and then start from beginning. So see at the top it says slideshow.
I did have that up earlier, Lee, just on a bit of a sort of a dry run there, yeah. Where are we at there, Lee? On the
Just underneath the orange bar, that one.
There you go.
Yeah,
From
right.
beginning.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
better.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the help there, Lee. Yeah. Good afternoon. Yeah. So yes, we need to talk about the waste and recycling policy. It's been worked on for a little while now. Initially, it was designed to be up and running, if I recall, closer to the time when Allerdale Waste Services stepped into the contract on or thereabouts. I think it was the 3rd or the 4th of April. But for a number of different reasons, with movement of staff and obviously the sort of COVID and the sort of reallocation of resources and things, we've got round to it now. So the purpose is to provide the Scrutiny Group with an update on where we are. So I've talked to Graham on the matter just yesterday, and while the slide does say what it says, obviously, I do think that there and we both agree there's a wider range of opportunities and benefits that we see that develop from the draft policy, which I might be able to touch on later around bulky waste and sort of localized opportunities. But essentially, we're sort of fixed on reducing the amount of total waste, going for disposal, maximising the use of recycling, and trying to work wherever possible within the waste hierarchy, which has been around for a considerable time, but it does appear at the moment to be at a sort of heightened level than what we've seen for many years. So the next three slides 4, 5, and 6, I will just slowly skip through them, but I will talk over each slide as I'm skipping through them. I think these slides highlight that the policy, the proposed policy, is designed to support a localised waste strategy that we're also working on at the moment. That we believe it's directly linked to our customers and the services that we provide as a waste collection authority. The policy is also trying to capture the positives from the current custom and practice, which I think on the sort of grand scheme of things is the refuse service and recycling service is greatly appreciated by the residents. So we've tried to capture the positives on the current position with regards to waste and recycling that we've had for many years. But this policy also aims to formalise many of the current methodologies and systems that are in use. In parts, however, although I perhaps won't get into the detail today, we do, however, try to make some suggestions where we feel that changes may be necessary. And we've added some points within the policy that support the national waste context of reduce, reuse, and recycling, which is it's a fairly simple message that's it's very pertinent at the moment. So I think we've got a number of the next two slides. They've got 10 bullet points each, and if you'd like to have a read through them, I have a feeling which ones would be the most interest to members. I guess they're the ones where we get most sort of noise from our customers. Perhaps the sort of the methodology, the methods of household waste collection might be a good one. Replacement or larger containers. But I'll start with the. I won't start with the first bullet point of the sort of legislation, but I will move on to the more sort of customer focused one of methods of household waste and recycling collection. The policy looks at the preferred method of collection, which I'm sure we're all aware of, which is the wheeled bin. They're very popular, and they have been for a number of years. The policy also outlines a number of alternative options of storage and collection that we may utilise on occasions. And I think, again, most members will be aware of different circumstances that we have to approach where wheeled bins as the preferred method just can't be used. So we make some reference to the alternative methods of bags and bags of various kinds and boxes and smaller bins. This section also goes into a little bit of detail as to how we support the aims of the national waste hierarchy, in that the methodology of bins being provided and the sizes do support the reduce, reuse and recycle, in that over the course of a collection cycle, if a property has got a full subscription of 4 containers, the recycling element far outweighs the recycling volume far outweighs the refuse volume, so there's encouragement there. The next point there on communal methods of collection, it might be of interest in that it's a desired method of collection, and we do have some levels of success with it. It's efficient. It improves the amenity value of areas, but also just to add that there are some risks attached to that with the communal methods in terms of contamination in particular. The presentation of containers, there's been a small number of contacts with...
Ernie, sorry, can I just interrupt?
Okay.
I'm not sure everybody will know what the communal method of collection is.
Oh, sorry.
What does that
sorry.
mean?
Yeah, a communal method of collection normally applies to where there's a multi-occupancy type of situation. So we do have particular practical examples where perhaps there may be 40 flats. So as opposed to providing 40 refuse containers, perhaps 40 120 recycling containers, 42 40s, we provide the large industrial type wheeled containers, and as I say, it can be really beneficial for the efficiencies of the service, but it does have its drawbacks. Thankfully, they are few and far between. I'll move on to the next one, because presentation of containers has arisen as a problem just of late, whereby we touch on the need for selected collection days and the times when containers are required to be out for collection by the crews. This section also explains the preferred location of containers and goes into detail where sometimes we face some limitations. What are in these modern sort of times, very technical and complex road-going heavy goods vehicles. I'm referring to when we're travelling along unmade roads or perhaps unadopted highways and private lanes. But irrespective of the unmade road or the unadopted lane scenario, sometimes there's just a presentation issue in a regular sort of day-to-day kind of curbside environment, So the position is that the council will have a representative, and this has been the position for a while, where the council representatives could visit a property or even a number of properties to provide advice with an aim to achieving a suitable outcome. I think the frequency of collections is a fairly sort of common theme. We just really touch on in this part of the policy, we just touch on bank holiday collections and the communications around that. Point 6, the replacement of bins section, it provides information linked to circumstances when we will, currently will, and when we won't exchange or replace a bin. And it highlights a number of examples where we won't replace a bin, which is where it may smell, it may be dirty, or something along those lines. Where we do replace containers, or we would normally replace a container, is where it may be damaged by the collection operations, or as is the case, we've had wheelie bins out there since 1988 now. Sometimes the bins fail through wear and tear, and it might even be causing some sort of element of risk to the crew or the customer. So in those instances, of course, we'd replace them. Larger containers in point 7 here. We do provide these, but we really do try to provide these only to those that are in genuine need. And the waste team and our colleagues in the customer services do impress upon customers when they're making a request for a larger container to adopt the national guidance linked to reducing, reusing and recycling. Again, the policy, it does capture the current sort of position where large bins are normally, but not exclusively, applied to large families with 5 or more, perhaps a family with a child in nappies, or perhaps where a medical need generates additional waste. So there are a number of options there to apply for a larger container, but we do try to encourage the recycling element before issuing, distributing these large containers. The smaller containers just makes a reference to our willingness to provide smaller containers to help people who may benefit from using a small container. Item 9 might be of interest in that in regards to additional containers, the policy suggests we'd only really try to provide for the efficiencies of the collection rounds. We'd normally only provide 1 wheelie bin for each waste or recycling stream. So I can give you an example here. The most common example is where perhaps a resident may have a 120 litre bin and they may need a larger capacity. So as opposed to giving them an additional 120 bin, we'll actually provide them with a 240 litre bin. So the crews are only emptying 1 bin per property. Another example may be where the customer may have a 240 litre blue lidded paper bin, and they may feel the need for a larger bin. But as opposed to providing 2 times 240 litre paper bins, we would normally try, if at all possible, it's subject to storage and such like, but we normally just try to provide 1 times 360 litre bin, again, to improve the efficiencies of the collection rounds. I think they're the most sort of most common sort of the bullet points that I've raised. They're the most sort of common issues that we face from those 10. So if it's okay, I'll just move on to the next slide. Missed collections or collections reported as missed. This section of the policy, it refers to these to collections that are reported as being missed, which can place a strain on the service. Allerdale Waste Services and the council have measures in place to mitigate this, and this is where the crew's initial aim, obviously, is to collect as many containers from as many of the correct homes on the correct days. So what we have when a crew arrive at the premises where the containers aren't presented, the crew will log this situation on these in-cab devices that they have. So at a later point in the day, if the customer then contacts the council after the crew have passed to report this as a missed collection, we would be able to explain to the customer that the crew have made the collection on the prescribed day at the correct time, and therefore in this instance the crew would not normally be asked to return to this address. If, however, a property has no containers out for collection and the crews don't log this situation as not being presented via the in-cab system, then there's a likelihood that they might be asked to return within the 48 hours. And while I did say that collections can be a strain on the service, Allerdale Waste Service is doing a good job in reducing the number of genuinely missed collections, whereby we're somewhere in the region of 300 to 350 plus properties genuinely reported as missed from 400 plus thousand collections, potential collections. So it's an incredibly low rate. And from those 300 to 350 or perhaps 370, on occasions there's only perhaps 2 or perhaps 5 or 6 or 7 very low numbers that aren't returned for within the 48 hours. So it's work ongoing. It's work in progress. Weather disruption, we generally have support on this from the customers, and thankfully it is a rare occurrence. But this section just briefly describes how we'll aim to catch up with disruption of services, and it explains that by and large, to protect public health, on these rare occasions, refuse does become a priority. And in my experience, recycling may be disrupted, and generally, but not always, but generally, garden waste service are the first casualty. This on the basis that garden waste isn't a statutory function, and again, to protect public health to a lesser extent, the glass cans and plastic is sort of a risk-based collection system that we would adopt. It's just what happens now, really. Overloaded containers, again, it is quite rare, but this section highlights. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you did say you weren't going to read out you weren't going to speak to every point. Time's getting on.
Yeah, okay. I'll just move on to let me see. Excess waste is quite a regular occurrence. It's sometimes an issue that we have to face. This section provides guidance on how to reduce the possibility of this situation occurring. We don't normally take excess waste. However, it does highlight there are times when we will remove it, such as I alluded to before, quickly on inclement weather, or where there's been perhaps industrial action. And an example coming up quite soon will be Christmas, where we'll remove excess waste. And the more recent example was in the lockdown, in the national lockdown from the March period, where crews were instructed to remove it. I think assisted collection is probably a good point to briefly touch on. The policy is clear in terms of helping those in genuine need, but it's also clear in that we like to ensure that assisted services are only provided where required. Again, in normal circumstances, representative council would need to visit the property and establish an agreed collection system that meets the residents' needs, but that also that of the collection crew, thinking about access for the crews, loose dogs, lock gates, and similar sort of practical issues. Just very quickly on the bulk of collections, we describe how to contact the council, but we also touch on the sort of need, the potential to help in local charitable organisations with goods that are reusable. So it's something that we can look at in the future. The bring sites, I'll move over the trade waste, but the bring sites, again, it outlines the important role that they play, but also the problems that we face, and also provides a backdrop to how we propose to approach this. I'll just move on to the next slide. The last 2 points at the top there touch on the enforcement action, which legal colleagues have agreed, whereby, again, with subject to the severity, the education, and then ultimate enforcement is the role that we take with regard to waste services. And the last point there is just basically to outline to anybody reading the policy that there's an assurance there that data will not normally be used for routine bin types of collections, but will more than likely be used in the collections of bulky waste, mist collections, and more bespoke type of activities. So as in the policy, there's a number of appendices there, which I understand you haven't had sight of. The next slide just outlines the help that we've had from Allerdale Waste Legal, our portfolio holder and the head of finance. And the next steps, we're looking for suggestions for possible amendments by the scrutiny group, perhaps after the meeting, with a view to presenting on the 9th and the 9th of December and the 13th of January. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you.
Very important issue for the council. I mean, it depends how you calculate it, but one way of looking at the accounts, as I was looking at the financial statements yesterday, is the whole waste and recycling business is worth about 11 million quid, which is, you know, it's a massive, because normally you would just look at the net cost, but actually it's a massive proportion of the council's budget, probably the biggest single item that the council ever deals with is waste and recycling. You mentioned the policies in preparation. You mentioned there's some. Obviously, you consult with edge, but consulting with us. What's the plan to consult with the public, the users?
You may be on mute, Ernie.
Yeah, I am. Yes, yeah. The plan would be to go via the comms team. I would expect Mike. I'll probably need to get a little bit of steer on that from colleagues on that particular aspect. But I would fully expect it to be out to the public at some point. Yes.
Okay. Is there before I open up to questions? Is there when members are looking at it and asking questions, would they please just have a look and see if there's anything they were expecting to see in a waste and recycling policy, or for it to address that it doesn't seem to address, anything missing or anything there that you're actually surprised to see. Please bear that in mind, and because I think that will help in drafting the policy if we identify anything's been missed or anything that you think maybe shouldn't be there. So I'll just open up to questions now. Councillor Scott, followed by Councillor Karen-Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ernie. It was just a quick one. First off, I've got to say, I actually think they do a great service, and the lads on the grounds do an amazing job, really. Can I just clarify what times our bins are meant to be collected from a policy point of view? And the reason I ask that is that I often see bins being brought to back lanes at 25 to 7 in the morning. And of course, then next thing you know, you see a bin halfway up the lane that hasn't been collected when they're collecting them. And I just wonder, is there an opportunity here where we need to be more clear in what the policy is to customers, really, from a point of view of collection?
Yeah, I agree. Yes, the official collection times are 7 o'clock, and you are correct. There are some collections that we're aware of that perhaps do start before 7, and we're working on that particular matter because it can cause both a strain on our service and problems for the customers. 7 o'clock is the prescribed time at the moment. Yeah, I think within the policy there it says that we require residents to, where it's practical, of course, to have the bins returned back into the property by midnight on the same night. Obviously, that's subject to people working difficult shift patterns and things like that. But 7 o'clock is the start time. Yes, yeah.
It's like I say. Sorry, I just had a few ones there, Mike. Really, it was just obviously that's a big one for missed bins, isn't it? Because if we're flagging them as missed bins when actually they weren't missed, they were out at 7.
Yeah.
it's a bit of an issue. And it was just on the bulky waste collection. I think it was £27.50 for up to 6 items. I don't know whether that's value for money, whether that's something that really needs to be addressed, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's comparable with other districts of a sort of similar nature. But I think it's very subjective. I agree. But when you look at the 6 or even perhaps 4 items, if they're you would never get 4 wardrobes, of course. But if you had a 3-piece sweetener wardrobe, it would actually take the full capacity up of a skip actually. And I don't know what the price of a skip is, but I think it's in the region of perhaps plus £150 or thereabouts. So, you know, and the guys do turn up on the prescribed day and collect from, obviously not within the property in this area, but from within the boundary of the property. So it's, I think it's, I don't think it's good value, but I agree, it is a subjective issue, that one, yes.
I agree with you, and I think I'm aiming it more as a commercial aspect, as in £27.50 for up to 6 items, where it might have been easier saying per single item and going in at a set price.
Okay.
Maybe that was all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann-Holmes.
My question is in relation to wheelie bins and the correct size per dwelling. When the tenancy or the ownership changes, is it possible that the new tenant or the owner be assessed for perhaps a change to a larger or a smaller bin? Or is it possible that could be embedded into the contract specifications? Because I often see a huge wheelie bin where there's only one person because the other people have either died or left the family, or there's been a change in the tenancy or the ownership. I see that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make there, in that we do recognise that is an issue for us, and within this policy there is a section in the larger bin section whereby there's a commitment that we will review them on a more regular basis than we perhaps have in the past. I think it's commonplace actually, and in line with the government's strategy of reducing waste at the outset. It's something that we are keen on doing.
Okay, Karen, have you supplementary, or is that okay? Councillor Greeny.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Ernie. Enlightening. I think what I noticed was there's quite a lot of practical policy associated topics within those bullet points. I just wondered if we've missed one with regards to information management. I've sat on quite a few task and finish groups, and one of the issues that's come to the fore recently has been the collection and retention and management of information, and how we can use that in the future going forward with regards to continuous improvement and that type of thing. I'm wondering if is that something that we cover, but we just haven't covered within the policy or captured it within the policy, and is it something that we need to consider moving forward?
Yes, there is a section at the end there on the privacy, but I think the line that you're coming from is the actual data that we hold to improve the services. So yeah, but I think just referring to what Carney was saying there, where bins may be allocated to a premise in year one for the correct reasons, of course. We could improve the service by reviewing that allocation in year two. In there, yes, I think if is that the line where you're coming from there?
I think mine was more of a line of actually what data we can actually collect for the management of the services that we're providing, and also for future assessments, if we're looking at further improvements or rationalisation and that type of thing. What data we actually collect and what databases we actually keep.
There's an incredible amount of data collected at the moment by Allerdale Waste Service and indeed the predecessor FCC, linked around the developing the efficiencies of the rounds in particular. It's very much tonnage and kilograms types of tons per round and kilograms per property type arrangements in that sense, yeah.
I think where I was coming from is it's something that we need to capture within the actual overall policy itself. I think that's what, Mike mentioned, have we missed anything that we might actually capture within it? And that's all I was coming from, really.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Thank you.
something we can surely discuss. Yes, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Councillor Anderson's got his hand up. Tony, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Ernie. I've got two concerns living out in the rural areas. It's plastic waste. You mentioned in the policy about maximising the plastic waste. There's a lot of people with very, very keen green issues, as you can imagine, in the rural areas, as to all parts of Allerdale. But they're quite vociferous about the plastic, and lots of rumours sort of filter down about the type of plastic. It's a bit like leaves on the trees with railway tracks. There's only a certain type of plastic that can be used in recycling. What are your efforts to maximise or optimise the plastic waste, and is it in the policy? And the other one is the policy linked to fly tipping in from Westwood to Severn to Thursby to Kerthet, right across my particular ward, fly tipping, because they're close to trunk roads. They're getting an awful lot of fly tipping. I'm dealing with one in Welton at this moment in time. And is fly tipping linked to recycling and waste management? They're my two questions. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thanks for those questions. Yeah. Plastics is, it has been a difficult material for us to handle for many years. However, it's fair to say it has become easier in more recent years with the range that's available to us, where perhaps in the earliest stages of recycling we were incredibly limited to literally to plastic bottles alone. So we have been able to expand with our off-takers towards a sort of wider remit. So it is work in progress, but we are we are led by our off-takers and their ability to sell the material. So, and it would perhaps be wrong to say any recycling scheme is only as good as its sort of marketable value, but it does play a really important part in how we select the products that we can recycle. But I am pleased to say that we have got a really good off-taker in Cumbria in the shape of Cumbria Waste Management, Cumbria Waste Recycling, who are continually trying to improve the range of materials that local authorities like ourselves can collect. And I do believe they've got some new infrastructure up at their Hespin Wood site, which may broaden the sort of scope for additional plastics. But essentially at the moment, we still are on a broad sort of approach of rigid types of plastic only for the meantime, whether it be tubs or cartons or bottles. Those types of white or the clear, and at the moment we aren't able to deal with the recycling of the carrier bag types of materials or perhaps cling film type of materials at the moment. But the markets are widening up, so we keep a sort of watching eye over what's available to us.
Okay, thanks very much, Ernie.
And the other, sorry, Chair, sorry, Ernie. And the other part about fly tipping and the link to policy.
Yes, yeah, the policy.
Oh yes, sorry, forgot about that. Yeah, go on.
The policy does touch on right at the outset. Well, sorry, no, it doesn't touch on it. It goes into some detail with regards to the links that waste and fly tipping have, and the duties that householders and businesses each have. We do work closely with our enforcement team, the enforcement guys, and they have had some success of late. So yeah, it is in there, but again, if it needs an amendment or it needs adjusting to be a bit more reflective as to what perhaps members feel, then we can certainly look at that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Daniels.
What about mine?
Thank you, Chair. Ernie, we touched on this a while back, I think at the last meeting, but with Charles Holmes. Is there any movement on the collection of Tetra Paks? We were talking about having a kind of looking to see if it would work at Otley Road in Keswick. Is that moving ahead, that idea at all, do you know?
Yes, I've been in contact with the organisation, Ace Recycle, in regards to Tetra Pak, just asking a number of sort of operational questions, because it is quite a new, well, it isn't quite new, it's a new service to us, so we really needed to fully understand the methodologies and some of the impacts perhaps on the local environment that might sort of fall out from the service. But yeah, that still is in progress, and I aim to contact the the lead officer from Ace Recycling next week, try to get that off the ground.
Cheers, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. I've just noticed on my screen, Malcolm Granger's hand is completely obscured by the little label that says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube. I couldn't see your hand, Malcolm, please.
You're all right, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Only just a couple of little bits. I had a lady at my door this morning, and she says the hamlet of Greenfoot, Catlands, there's no recycling. They do pick the bins up, but there's no collection of recycling. And the second point was, why were the large bins behind the Snooty Fox pub taken away? Whose decision was it and why?
Okay, I'll try to respond to the first one first, Malcolm. I'm not that familiar with Catlands, but I feel I know vaguely where it is. Now, we within the policy, obviously I didn't touch on it I didn't go into any detail on it, but within the policy, we do try to explain that whilst we are keen to make collections of as much recycling as is practically possible, there are limitations to what we can do, both in terms of vehicular access and the we're keen not to deliver a recycling service with the best of intentions that is actually potentially more harmful to the environment in the sort of CO2 emissions. So we have to be fairly careful in that sense, Malcolm, where it has to be right for the environment. In that sense, a 26-ton vehicle driving perhaps a round trip of 3, 4, or perhaps 5 miles for 2 or 3 properties to most people might not be quite as good idea. We could perhaps put a lane end sort of collection point in for those customers where there's a recycling vehicle in the area, but perhaps not so much into the wider sort of expanse.
Ernie, will the policy deal with those issues so that we can see how you handle those trade-offs and what considerations are important in deciding whether you provide a recycling service to isolated settlements or isolated properties? As long as it's dealt with in the policy and it's explained and people can understand it, I think that's what we're looking for from the policy.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, we're going to have to move on. Councillor Scott's got his hand up. One last go, Paul, please.
Thanks, Chair. It was just really an idea, really, and I don't know whether it's something that needs to go into the policy, really, but where we do bulky item collection, have we thought of bulky item delivery, where actually people can pay £5 and deliver it to a set area for us where we can look at disposing it? You know, as Councillor Anderson said, people are just tipping stuff where they want to tip stuff. So we need to find another way of dealing with that. And if there's an opportunity there to introduce something in like that, it may well work for the community.
Yeah, it's something that we could certainly something we could consider and perhaps talk about the other side of the meeting today. I know we're conscious for time, but I'm not really sure we're on the sort of the direction there, Councillor Scott. But yeah, I'm sure it's something we could look at.
Okay, thanks, Ernie. Right, as part of this item, we're also looking at the Task and Finish Group report from the Future Waste Task and Finish Group. Is there, Malcolm Granger, you were chair of that, weren't you? Is there anything in your Future Waste Task and Finish Group report that isn't picked up by what we've heard from Ernie? Is it all consistent? What would you? Is there anything you'd like to pick out of the task and finish group report specifically that should get fed into this policy making process?
Our task and finish group through Carmel and myself was for the procurement.
Yeah, sorry, it's Councillor Greeny.
Yeah, Councillor Greeny's Borough.
Oh, sorry, right, go on. I thought it was.
Well, it wasn't waste management. I did one in the last term on waste management, but not this time. It's procurement.
Sorry, right.
No, you're all right.
Sorry, Ian, Councillor Greeny. I'm sorry, I thought it's your report, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, it's not my report. No, I wasn't on it, but I will present it if you wish.
Well, as long as somebody from that future.
Having read it, the only thing I can say is cross-party membership with regard to the stakeholder committee, really, Mike. That's the only thing that really stands out.
Right, okay.
I think the other two recommendations, 2 and 3, are actually covered.
Yeah, right. I've got a suggestion. Well, the third recommendation of the Future Waste Task and Finish group was that the Task and Finish group continues to sit during the waste strategy review process. Is that something that group wishes to do to track Ernie and Graham through this policy review to the point where it's completed? Because if people want to do that, if that group wants to continue for a time limited period until this waste and recycling review is completed, I think that would be fair enough.
I think, Councillor, the members of the group are not represented here this afternoon, but there was some interest in doing that. However, it might be recognised that the group has completed its work.
Yes,
and perhaps the committee, if they feel it is necessary to start a new process, that some of those members would be interested in doing that. But it was a question of do we say that section is now complete and we start a new process, and who might be interested in that?
Got you, Ian. I think we are saying that group has done what it set out to do. It's achieved its task. But if it would be helpful to have a group shadowing Ernie and Graham through this process to the point at which the review document or the strategy document is being adopted by the council in the new year. I think it's in February. It's due for adoption. So a short piece of work through to February, just to help with the process of getting that policy right, would probably be fine. If there are volunteers for it, I suggest we can circulate the members of that group and indeed any other members and ask if they want to be part of that process.
Yeah,
I think that might be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder if I could just possibly offer that if you recall, we established a policy group that draws in members from across the council to look at the full spectrum of policies. It might be that we can pull a meeting together for Ernie and Graham to come along to that session and go into it in a bit more detail with that group, and that might provide a bit of that initial overview as we head into the council decisions.
Is that that's helpful, Nick. I just wonder whether that policy group, as it's looking at every single policy across the council, has actually got time to get into the detail of this particular policy, or is it just looking at where they all fit together?
I think if you recall, Chairman, we've got quite a broad membership on that, and we still continue to invite other members onto that right. Group, and that members can dip in and dip out if they're interested or they don't feel as confident on a particular topic. So those members that are interested in it, we can set up a specific session on it, and then we can open that invitation up to all members of the council.
Yeah, and that actually might helpful. Thanks, Nick. That might actually help in joining up our future waste and recycling policy with the other shelffuls of policies we've got. In fact, might try it up and kind of and simplify things if we can see the connections. Okay, thanks. On the first recommendation about the stakeholder committee, I'm told that it's not possible because it's a subcommittee of the executive to have cross-party membership. The only people who can be on it are actually members of the executive. So we need to think a little bit more creatively how we achieve the same objective. And what I'm suggesting is that we consult co-chairs here, consult with the chairs and vice chair of audit, because they've also got an issue about how they relate to the stakeholder committee, which came up at the audit committee meeting yesterday, and also look at how this fits with the work of the Constitution Review Group, because we need to find a way of ensuring that the work of that stakeholder committee, as opposed to the work of Allerdale Waste Services, the work of the stakeholder committee is audited and scrutinised. So can I suggest we you let the chairs take that away together with the chair and vice chair of audit and the Constitution Review Group, work out how we can hold the stakeholder committee to account, because I think that's the purpose of the exercise, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Brendan, Colin, you've got your hand up. Do you want to offer us some words of advice?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, Chair, but I was just going to clarify there's been repeated references to stakeholder committee.
Sorry, shareholder committee
that you're referring to.
Shareholder committee, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a committee, as you quite rightly say, Chair, is a sub-delegation from the executive. It performs executive function, exercising the council's role as the sole shareholder of the wholly owned company.
Okay, thanks very much. If that's it, I'm going to bring this agenda item, or this combined agenda item, to a close. We're receiving the report of the Task and Finish Group, and thanks to the Task and Finish Group. We're noting the offer from the head of policy performance to take forward the policy review process into the group that he's organising, which is fine for now. We'll talk to Audit and Constitution Review Group about the accountability of the shareholder committee. We've adopted the recommendation about a presentation from the shareholder committee once a year. We've made a number of points about the review process for waste and recycling. I've made a note of them. I hope Lee and Ian have got all the points down that we made, but we'll ensure that they're pulled together into a recommendation or resolution from this committee, so that we've actually got something we can say the committee is decided, is resolved, is recommending that these particular items be taken into consideration. I don't ask me to read them all out because I won't be able to read or write in, but you all heard the debate, the discussion. I hope between us we've captured them all. Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on to item 7, local government reorganisation. The agenda item reads: consideration of the decision taken by the executive on the 25th of November, who did resolve, I think, to make a submission to government on December the 9th, or before December the 9th. What that report decision by executive on Wednesday didn't say was the detailed content of the submission they would make, because I suspect it's not actually finalised yet. But I would ask Nick Hardy to give us an update of the process to the 9th of December. And then after that, I want to raise a governance issue about decision making as between executive and council. Nick.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So obviously we had the full council meeting on Monday night, where the council passed 2 motions. I've drafted that letter. That letter is now with Andrew Seekings to send off to the relevant Secretary of State. So if that letter hasn't gone today, it'll go tomorrow. And then obviously we had the meeting of the executive on Wednesday, where executive authorised the submission of a full business case to be submitted before the deadline of the 9th of December, and that the development of that full business case be delegated to the chief executive. I think we're expecting the first draft of that full business case today. If not today, then Monday. There's then further weekly meetings now and weekly drop-ins with KPMG and the other councils to go through that document. And that's with a view to the final submission being, as I said before, the 9th of December. So we have seen that kind of the first draft of the document, which are the bits that share that common introduction with all of the other local authorities in the area. Now the particular emphasis of the work of the consultants is developing the business case, in particular for our preferred model, which is the Allerdale, Copeland and Carlisle, and then the Eden, South Lakes and Borough model.
So, thanks, Nick. What can you tell us about executive's plans to involve other council members in scrutinising, in reviewing what's in that submission document? I assume somebody is going to sign it off to be submitted on the 9th of December. There'll be some process by which that document is adopted and sent off to government. And what's the role of the rest of us in you've moved? What's the role of the rest of us in contributing to that process or having our say about it? In terms of the detail of the submission report, I mean, council's already expressed its view on the overall process on Monday, but about the detailed content.
So in terms of the detailed content, as I said there, the executive decision on Wednesday delegated the final development of that business case and the submission of the business case to the chief executive. So in consultation with the leader, obviously. I'm not quite sure because I can't get up on my screen the timeline as to whether or not there is another meeting of the LGR cross-party meeting between now and the submission date, but I can check on that and I can let you know.
I would think it would be very helpful if there was an opportunity before the thing actually went in on the 9th of December for members to see actually what's being submitted about their future. Even if we can't change it or can't alter it, simply as a matter of courtesy, it'd be nice to be informed about the particular method of execution that's being proposed for us.
Yeah, I'll take that back to the chief executive and the deputy leader.
Right. Okay. So, right. That's one recommendation. Agreed. Are there any other questions or points anybody wishes to make to Nick or to the meeting in general about the local government reorganisation process? And I said I'm going to come to the governance of the process and the executive as opposed to council decision making in a minute. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was a fairly emotive meeting on Wednesday, but I can put the committee's mind to rest about anything underhand that was suggested. I can understand why that opinion was formed, but this has been going on for 13 years. And I've been a conservative. I've been involved with policy making and all sorts of stuff behind the scenes. And I can rest assured there weren't secretive phone calls or anything like that. This has been going on for 13 years and we're moving into different times. There's elections have been won and lost. There's new people in place. There's a different electorate. There's a different mood in the north. There's ideas of mayors, etc., etc. We have to move it on. I think it's as simple as that. And I think rest assured that I personally was no part of it, and I know nobody of any part of anything underhand. Action has to be taken, and I'm absolutely convinced that 6 borough councils are involved here, and you can include a 7th with North Lancs as well, that it will be imposed upon us if action wasn't quickly taken. I don't think timelines were devised to be a hand, and I can give the committee that assurance from my part at least.
Thanks, Tony. Anybody else want to make a point on the process? If not, I'll go on to Carney McCann-Holmes. I see you've got your hand up.
It's just to say, Chairman, that I support what you said in the beginning of your spiel there about the fact that a few people are making, and we should all be involved to know what's going forward. I would hate my telephone to ring and a member of the national press or the local press to ask me what I felt about the recommendations and had I had much part in it. I really wouldn't like that, and I don't think any other member would like that either.
Yeah, noted, Carney. Thank you. I think that's a point we need to emphasise. Executive might be making the decision, but it's actually effectively committing the rest of us, and so no decision without participation and all of that. The point I want to make about decision-making processes is that this has actually, we can argue about the decision-making process, and I know that I've made some representations, and I believe Councillor Scott's made some representations too, as to aspects of the 2000 regulations in terms of who's the decision-making body in this kind of process. And what I think it's thrown up is a problem in our understanding, possibly collectively as a council, of how the decision-making process as between executive and council is governed. There are provisions about plans, policies and strategies which have been adopted by council, then become, if you like, then override anything executive might want to do, depending on how you interpret the regulations. And I know that the monitoring officers have taken some advice on this from a QC who said that my objection in particular was invalid because the document I was referring to wasn't a plan, a strategy, or whatever. And I've been doing plans or strategies for 30 years. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But there was there's no explanation from this particular council as to why he thought this wasn't covered by the reg. It just simply said he didn't think it was, but didn't say why. So that leaves a gap in understanding, I think, and not just about this issue, but it throws up something for the future. There may well be other issues which come up where council wishes to take a view which may or may not be the same as the view the executive takes. And what is the process? We need to understand the process by which council can adopt a plan, strategy or policy, which is then binding on executive. Okay, maybe if we'd done that 6 months ago, then executive would have been constrained in its response to this government submission, but we didn't. Water under the bridge. But for the future, it may well be that we need to be clear about what are the functions of the council as opposed to the functions of the executive in terms of decision making, because there seems to be it seems to be at least scope for people honestly and genuinely to take different interpretations of that. And I've suggested and agreed that we should meet the monitoring officer and the and possibly eventually the constitution review. Maybe others were involved. Nick and his policy review team in particular, to look at this issue, because I'm also conscious, I think Nick mentioned it at a meeting a few months back, that he's doing a review of all these policies. We've got policy and strategy documents by the shelf full. We don't necessarily know which ones of them are current. We don't know which ones have been replaced. We don't know which ones of them are council documents that take precedence over the executive, or executive documents take precedence over the council. So it's the whole thing is mired in uncertainty, and I think we suggested we have a meeting to try and resolve that and get some clarity on what the constitutional relationships are. So that's, I mean, that's a recommendation I would make to the committee, is a quick lessons learned from this last exercise. We have some uncertainty about what the proper procedures are. Let's get them sorted. So I'll, if I may, I'll propose that from the chair. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody want to speak on that? Or if no one does and no one's against, if you're against that idea, raise your hand. If no one's against, we will take that as a decision, a resolution of this committee. Okay. At this point, before we come on to Q2 performance report, it must be my age. I would request that you all agree to an adjournment for absolutely no more than 5 minutes. Agreed. Can you sort that for us, Lee? Thank you. With whatever you need to do.
No problem. Members, just knock your cameras and you put yourselves on mute, and we're back at 14:48. Thank you. Chair, all the members are back.
Okay, thank you all for being back so promptly. We'll continue to item 8, Q2 performance report, with a view to running that into, if we need to, item 9, the Q2 finance report, because there's a relationship between the two. And what I'd like to do is, before we look at the report, to consider why we're looking at it. A couple of things come to mind. Is what we're looking at, is this report actually confirming that our performance is actually working towards delivering the objectives of the council plan? Are we doing are we actually doing the right things to achieve our objectives? What do we need to do differently? And are there any particular risks to those outcomes that are apparent from performance as reported in the performance report? So I would ask members to focus on the performance report from that perspective, and ask Alex, I think, if she would just give us a very brief introduction to the report, and then we can ask members to pick up as we go through the report any particular items that they see as showing up risks to our outcomes. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine. I'll just give you a very, very brief overview. The format hopefully is becoming familiar to members now because it's the same format as the Q1 report we looked at. So if members look at page 13 in their agenda pack, there's a short summary overview there for you, which just gives you a little breakdown in terms of numbers of red, amber, green across the different projects and activities contained in the report, and the key performance indicators as well. As you can see, that's telling you that the majority of those projects and activities are reporting as green for Q2. We have 6 that are amber, which are, again, there's details further on in the report at Appendix A. Predominantly those are just slight delays to timetables. By and large, nothing reporting as red for Q2. There is one project which has been closed, which is referred to at the top of page 14, and that's the Reedland Road project. And there was a report that went to executive about that in October, I think it was, which covered the reasons for that project being recommended to be closed. Again, on page 13, there's just a little set of highlights, just pulling out a few things from the report. But as we are where we are this year in this ever-changing world of restrictions, not restrictions, etc., there's obviously a reference at the very end of that page that kind of carries on onto the top of page 14 that talks about Q2 seeing the successful reopening of some of our leisure centres, and obviously they've subsequently sadly had to close again under the latest set of restrictions, but I think we're hopeful they'll be open again as of next week. So you do have to bear in mind that obviously this is a point in time report taking us up to the end of September, so there will be a few things that have moved on a little since the time period that this referred to. Page 14 just gives you a little summary of key performance indicators as well, just in terms of what's green, amber, red. There's just one indicator reporting a red off target, which is a 10% variance, just as a reminder, away from the target that's been set, and that relates to homeless preventions and relief outcomes. And there's a little explanation there, which again relates to it being a consequence of pandemic-related activities, really, and the fact that we have many more people in temporary accommodation for a lot longer than we might normally have currently. Again, there's a note there that just reminds about the fact that obviously, given where we are this year, we're tracking trends on some of those indicators rather than a specific target figure. So there's just a little summary there as well that just tells you that there are 8 indicators that don't have a fixed target, and 6 were either static or improving trend. So that was all I was going to say, really, in terms of just a quick summary.
Alex.
And then
that's much appreciated. Gives us a context. Can I just ask a question before I ask members to look at they pick out any items from the report they want to refer to? We did discuss at the previous meeting, I think, the possibility of a revision to the performance framework. That it was being looked at as to whether we'd actually got it right, or we could make improvements to the way we run our performance management framework. I recall that being discussed at some point, and I think being invited to take part in a meeting about it, but I seem to have lost track of that. Can you update us on that?
Yeah, it's still a piece of work that is ongoing. We've got a colleague, Ian Brogden, who started looking at performance data in a bit more detail across the organisation, just to really do a bit of a fundamental review of what we've got and what it's telling us, and whether we're looking at the right things, really. And then we need to marry that up with the planning around what comes after this delivery plan for next year. Obviously, things are still a little bit uncertain in terms of next year, but we need to sort of think out, as you say, what are the things that we need to do that help us achieve our objectives as set in the council strategy? What realistically can we achieve in the current circumstances? And then are we measuring the things that are important, and can we measure the things that are important, and how do we do that? So that is still a piece of work that's ongoing, so it hasn't by any means been and gone. There is still plenty of work to do on that.
Thanks, Phil. Let's keep the emphasis on doing the right things, because we employ managers to do things right. We need to look at whether they're doing the right things. So thanks for that, Alex. Can we look at the report in detail in its various sections? The first one is the Financially Secure Council. Is there anything on that one on page 16, running to 17 in your pack, that anybody wants to raise? Hands up if you do. Can't see anyone. I've got a question. I'm not sure whether it's something we need to look at or not, because I don't know what it means. Could you briefly tell us what a target operating model is? Briefly. There's a challenge.
If we still have Brendan might want to talk about that. That's his baby, really.
Yeah, I can happily do that very briefly. It is the desired future state for the organisation. So we've set a 10-year plan as a council strategy, and we've set out where we want to be in 10 years' time, how we want to serve our customers, how we want to work as an organisation, how we want to provide our services. And the operating model is how we do that. So it's the future vision for the organisation.
Okay, thanks very much. When will we get to see something when will you be able to say, here is our target operating model, this is what it looks like, and this is what it does? How far away are we away from that?
Not far away at all. There's a draft document that exists, as well as a roadmap of transformation projects that will deliver outputs to get us to that place. So there's a planned series of engagement activities that really we'd hoped to be able to do over the last couple of months in our original program. COVID knocked that back a little in terms of how we engage, but we're not far away at all, and I'll certainly be happy to bring something along to this committee and take a run through if that's something that you would appreciate.
I assume there is some kind of linkage. There must be some kind of linkage between the piece of work that's been referred to about the performance management framework, because part of the target operating model must be, how do you know when what you've done has achieved what you wanted to do, and are you measuring the right things to determine that? So maybe at the appropriate point we could schedule a presentation to this committee on the target operating model and the associated revised performance framework. We can discuss outside the meeting when it would be appropriate to do that. Can we agree that? Okay. Is there anything else on the Financially Secure Council? Any of the items there that members want to raise? If not, we'll go into Cleaner, Greener, Allerdale. Any of the points there that anybody wants to raise? If not, I've got one. I think I said at the last meeting and picked it up afterwards that on the green infrastructure report, we didn't have any reference to the programme that's been kicking around for a while, but maybe it's got held up because of problems with COVID and the Heritage Lottery Fund, about Workington Hall Parklands, the big project that was being considered for Workington Hall Parklands that could, I suppose, have gone into the Workington Town Dale Fund, but didn't, because you can only have one of one kind of project. So that's we did suggest that though it would be included in the report on Cleaner Green at Allerdale, but unless I've missed it, I can't see it. Can we not suggesting that we make a big issue of it, but if we haven't got it this time, can we please have it next time?
If I can come back on that, Chair, I suppose my point on that, I think, would be that the delivery plan that you are looking at in terms of this performance report doesn't cover obviously everything that we do across the entire organisation. It doesn't cover all the tasks that all the teams are doing and all the projects that all the teams are doing at any one point in time, because if it did, it would be truly enormous. The particular green infrastructure and biodiversity projects that were identified as being taken forward as part of that delivery plan for this current year are those that are outlined there. So that's the water environment grant projects at Siddick Pond, land at North Side, and then Workington Nature Partnership and the Get Buzzing sites. I think, as you're aware, the Hall Park project hasn't gone away. It just wasn't one that was going to be hugely progressed this year, and that's partly to do with, my understanding is, funding and the availability of funding. So in terms of what is described as the key project or activity in that delivery plan, we're reporting against that rather than just all things to do with green infrastructure.
Okay, what I take away from that then is, if we want to see that move forward, we need to make sure it's in next year's delivery plan. When we come to consideration of next year's delivery plan, I'll raise it then.
Yeah, and I think if there are realistic opportunities to get some more funding and to progress that, then it absolutely will be, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Malcolm, Councillor Granger, you've hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, do you think it's a fair assumption that this year has been a really, really bad time for organisations, people getting their head together and act together? And would it not be easier and better for them to leave it till the turn of the year, maybe January, February, before you ask for answers on some of these things?
Yeah,
on these green issues, on all the issues, really.
Yeah, point taken, Malcolm. I was just going to give councillors a chance to flag up any issues of concern from the. Well, we're not necessarily expecting that we'll have the answers this minute, but we could just flag up anything that's of concern. Can we go on to Invest to Grow 22, 23, 24? Anything there? No.
No.
Well, funnily enough, I've got one. You'll be surprised, Malcolm. I've got one. Reedlands Road. We've mentioned the Reedlands Road as the amber one, and it turned out, and as it often does when you start sticking a spade in the ground, you find the ground isn't what you thought it was. It turns out that what was planned to happen at Reedlands Road can't happen. I'd just like an assurance that that outcome, which isn't going to happen, and is therefore, ineffective, you could say it's gone red rather than amber, because it's just not happening. That we're looking at alternative plans for Reedlands Road, because we've got a derelict site there effectively, and one of the approach roads into Workington by one of our prime industrial estates. It may not be possible to do what was originally planned to do with it by developing business units, but we can't just leave it to rot for another 40 years like it's been rotting for the last 40 years, and we need to do something to effectively sort out that site. So can we flagged that up one as an issue of concern, that we would like the executive to have some plan for Redlands Road at some point. Okay, agreed. Right, Councillor Daniels, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. On page 22, the develop the housing company. I'm looking at the Otley Road scheme. It says here, I presume maybe because of COVID, says here work would start in November. I walked by the site today. I don't see any work in progress at the moment. Just wondering, is that still? I don't know who's going to answer the question. Is it because of COVID that we haven't progressed that at all?
I'm not sure of the answer, Councillor Daniels, but I'll ask Graham Wilson to send an answer through.
I have actually asked Graham, and Stephen Holland came back to me with, we have detailed planning approval to convert Otley Road to 4 one-bedroomed affordable homes. The tender is going out at the moment to have the works completed by April, May.
Can we have that circulated to the committee, please, so we can all read what you're reading in?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Daniels, you okay with that?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, I can see Councillor Greeny and then Councillor McCarran-Holmes.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Just on the Redlands Road project, given there's been some issues with regards to significant projects over the last, 8 months that I've been involved in the council, I'd like to get a good understanding in terms of what money we've already spent up front with regards the Redlands Road project, and just to give us an idea, we've come to actually stick a spade in the actual ground, and we found that it isn't suitable. I would have thought some groundwork searches would have been up front before we actually started doing any planning for that. Is there any way we can get an indication of what money's actually being spent up front on that?
Yeah, it's actually in the finance report that we're coming to next. If you can hang on a minute, Ian, we'll come to that. We'll pick that. I think that does actually answer your question, but if it doesn't, when we come to it, we can shout up. Okay.
It was also in the executive report that made the decision to cancel the project.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor McCann-Holmes, Carney, please.
My point is exactly the same regarding Redlands Road. I think there are lessons to be learned here. If I bought a bit of land and I was going to do something with it, I would make jolly sure before I ever started to plan that it was fit for purpose that I was going to use it for. And this has happened before. This happened when they were building houses a long time ago, and they just kept on building. It was slum clearance, and we've had gas issues and other things. Lessons to be learned here, Chairman.
Yes, that point is taken, Carney. We could ask. I think I remember, if I remember rightly, the story is told in the executive report on that. So if members are concerned about that, could I ask Ian to dig out that executive report and circulate to members so that they can see what the timeline was and how we got to where we are?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else on that one? Can we go on to outstanding local services? Any issues we want to raise? On outstanding local services? I think actually a fair number of them have been covered already. Anything? No. And finally, thriving towns and villages. No. Okay, can we just jump on then? Can we just receive the report and note those? Oh, sorry, I've missed resilient communities. Sorry.
And Councillor Greeny has his hand up.
Yes, Ian.
Hi, Mike. Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, resilient communities, work with GLL, page 33. I note that in the finance report that we give GLL another £40,000 to deal with pandemic issues. I'm just a bit curious, given that the centres have been closed, why they would needed that, and all their staff have been on furlough. Why would we actually support a company of their size? I think they've got money in the bank of the tune of 25–30 million pound, and we're giving them £40,000 to help them. I presume our contract payments were still upheld to them, were they?
I would guess so, but I don't know. I think we'll have to ask officers to take that away,
yeah,
and circulate a written response to that question, if you would please, Alex, Ian, whoever, take that one away and come back with a response to it to be circulated to members.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. A couple of those issues will. Have you got your hand up again, Ian?
Yes, sorry, Mike.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, Mike. Yeah,
go on then.
It's on page 35 with regard to leisure centre usage and that type of thing. I've noticed when we're actually doing reports and finance reports, we tend to keep Maryport Wave out of leisure centres. I was just wondering, and there's quite a significant budget within that line. I think it's looking at, I think I've got it down as 574k for the leisure centres, and I was just wondering what exactly that covers, given that the Wave Leisure Centre covers about 180k. Where's the 574k for leisure centres going? And why are the leisure centres? Why are all the other leisure centres not kept separate, so we can actually determine accurately where the spends are actually all going in terms of targets?
I think as a former portfolio holder, I can give you part of the answer to that.
Okay.
The Wave actually was, and maybe still is, maybe isn't now, maybe it's been merged. The Wave was actually a different contract.
Okay.
To the with JLL to the contract for the other three, Workington, Maryport, and Keswick leisure centres. Because originally, if you remember, the Wave wasn't actually a leisure centre. As such, it was something else entirely. So it was subject to a different contract. So there was a different funding model in place. As to whether, because I asked this question myself some years ago, as to whether you can get figures for the operation of each of the leisure centres separately. Well, yes, you can, technically, but what the difficulty then got is stripping out some of the management and other overheads, because some of the managers aren't allocated specifically, and some of the tasks that jail are specifically allocated to an individual leisure centre. There are some people who work across all the leisure centres, and indeed work across the leisure centres and the Wave. So stripping their costs out down to individual leisure centres is difficult. But I know you can get operating figures for each of the centres, and a separate figure for the costs of staff who work between the centres, which are difficult to apportion between the centres. So you can get those figures, and if you want, we'll ask for them. Are we going to ask for them?
Yeah, I think it'd be useful. If you look at that number, it's nearly £600,000, and we should have a bit more accuracy in terms of, especially with regard to leisure centres, given that there's only another three, how that's devised up.
Yeah,
in terms of support. Because a lot of people mentioned to me, "Oh, the Wave's a white elephant." You know, if it was any other leisure centre, it would be closed down. But in reality, you know, what are we spending on the other leisure centres? Let's put it in perspective so we can get an actual angle on it.
Yeah,
that's
that's fair. I know that you should. I've seen the figures. We should be able to get them. So can we make a note to ask for those figures? And maybe it's really maybe it's technically something for the next item on the finance report.
Thank you, Chair.
So we can get a breakdown on that. Right, okay. If we go on to the finance report, sorry, Malcolm, Councillor Granger, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, GLL and the wave at Maryport's been an ongoing thing for many years. I've asked Alex, I think Alex is sick of me asking for figures on the wave, because we seem as though we subsidise it a lot. And even when he wants refurbishing, we refurbish it for them, and then we still subsidise them. So I honestly don't see the logic in some of the things that goes on at the wave. Honestly, I think it wants to be scrutinised and just checked up on, because it is getting a lot of money.
Well, let's get the figures, and we'll say how much, and we'll decide what we do about it then.
Well done, thank you.
You got your hand up again, Ian. It was up from last time.
No, it's just touching on what Malcolm said there. Yeah, he's saying about the wave, and we're all fully aware of that. And I think that's where I was coming from. We need to get a perspective across all the leisure centres, really. Yeah. I think that doesn't come clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We could look at. We'll get the figures for that and look at them. Coming to the finance report, and again, I'd just like to say we're a couple of things on this. What we're looking at here, I think, I would suggest, members, is the recurring growth and saving and the one-off growth and saving identified in the current review, because as we go into December, we've got a budget task and finish group lined up, which is going to be looking at the way next year's budget's being put together and whether that actually reflects the corporate priorities of the council. So a lot of this report is actually going to be picked up. The medium-term financial plan and the building of next year's budget is going to be picked up by the budget task and finish group. So I would suggest we just focus on pages 50, 51, 52, 53, and over to 54 in your agenda pack. And one of them there you will see, I've lost it, it's there somewhere. Raislands Road Business Park. Yeah, the information that you wanted, Ian, is, well, maybe not all, but largely there. There may be more. There's write-off of previously capitalised project expenditure and unwind associated capital spending. It's on page 52, halfway down the page. A requirement to repay ERDF grant drawn down to date of 145,000. It seems to come to a total, if you like, sunk cost, money spent that we're not going to get back, or grant we have to repay, of £270,000 on that. So, yeah, obviously we would have been spending that money if the project had gone ahead. As the project's not going ahead, that's now £270,000 of money that's been spent that we're actually not going to see much, if any, return on. Councillor Daniels, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back. It was a question I sent to Ian because he did ask me if there were any questions. And it's item 510, and it's about the S31 grant. What I'm trying to find out, particularly as pertaining to holiday let, when the small business tax relief is waived for these businesses, do we get the whole of what we should have got back from central government with the S31 grant, or do we only get percentage of it? Do you see what I'm asking?
I think we get it all, but we can ask Catherine if she's there.
Come in, Chair, yeah, coming at that point. Simple answer is yes.
We get the whole amount back. Okay.
We get the whole amount back. So what the Section 31 grant does is at the start of the financial year, we have to estimate the amount of money we're going to collect in council tax, and we have to estimate the money that we're going to get in business rates, and that forms part of the precept, if you like, that we have to pay out. If the government then bring in policies that change that amount of business rate income or council tax income that we will receive as an authority, they award us a Section 31 grant, and that comes into the authority outside of the collection funds. It comes right into Allerdale Borough Council.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Just cleared that up. I just had that question asked by another member of Keswick Town Council. So thank you. I just can confirm that. Cheers.
Thank you. Can I ask a question on page 51? Table 12, page 51, Solway Coast A1B, grant funding of salary costs. I always get confused about this because the growth figure is actually in brackets. So is that negative growth? Does that mean that we're actually going to get £41,000 of grant funding towards salary costs that we didn't think we were going to get, and so actually, and it's in brackets for that reason?
Sorry, without having the detail in front of me, it's a saving, so it means it's probably grant income that we've received or cash that we've set aside to cover the salary costs that we don't require anymore. So it's been released as a saving.
Right. Okay. So right. So yeah. Fine. Has anybody got any other issues on there?
Is it worth giving you just a little bit of context in terms of the Q2 and the revised budget?
Well, yes, please go on then. Yeah, that wouldn't do us any harm, would it?
I suppose it was just to say, really, in terms of setting the budget. Obviously, the budget, and I know you've forming a task and finish group shortly, Mike. But the budget that was approved for this financial year obviously was set before COVID. And COVID and the impacts of COVID have dominated the budget position this year. So you'll see from the early, well, actually just before, isn't it? Before this financial year, towards the end of March, that it's had significant impact on our budget. And that budget that you've got in front of you, so the Q2 monitoring and the revised budget, is actually to account for the impact of COVID.
Yeah.
And particularly for us, the pressures that that's had on the budget. And I think it makes a point in the report that it's not necessarily it's not necessarily expenditure that we've had to deal with, although we have had to deal with the increased homelessness and the rough sleep and particular issues around PPE. We made a contingency early doors for if there was an impact on our waste services. But for us, the real impact has been on our income streams. So car park and the fees and charges and our commercial income. And really that budget that you've got in front of you is to identify those pressures that weren't known at the time in the budget and effectively to reset the 2021 budget to account for the impact of COVID. Now, luckily, the government have reacted and we've had, I think, 4 tranches now of funding to cover the impacts. And just during the last month, we've submitted our first claim for the income loss scheme, which is quite complicated. And but that, in effect, gives us around 75%. Well, it's probably less than that because I think we've got to fund part of it. But some of the income streams, so we're getting that cash back in. So actually, the impact you'll see from the bottom of that report is that we're anticipating that it's a limited impact on our general fund balances this year. So apologies, I haven't got the numbers in front of me. So I think it's 38,000 will be the impact on the revised budget for this year. So that's a call on our general fund balances. But obviously, as part of that work to do the revised budget, and because of the uncertainties around COVID, one of our priorities was to try and bolster our reserves and protect that general fund balance. So we've done an exercise with the portfolio holders and the heads of service to look at earmarked reserves So earmarked reserves are literally just our general fund balances, but they've been set aside for a specific purpose. And we've released some of that. So we've released, I think, £167,000 back into the general fund position to try and protect that, our balances going forward. Because you'll know on the executive the other day, there was also the first report on the budget strategy for next year, which was set in a really difficult circumstance, because actually at this point we don't know what the impact of the local government finance settlement is going to be. Interesting, the Chancellor made his announcement yesterday, so I think we're not likely to get the settlement till probably the earliest of around 16th of December. But you'll see that the early indications are that we've got a budget deficit next year of around about £1 million. So although we're balanced this year, obviously the work now is to close that pressure, or close the gap, if you like, for the next financial year. Thank you.
Chair, you've muted yourself.
I'll say thanks, Catherine. That's very useful background. It prepares the ground for the budget building task and finish group, which is meeting sometime in the first part of December. I can't remember the exact date. I can't remember who's on it. But they'll have to get much more to grips with the detail of this and its implications for next year than we need to at the moment. If we could just focus on this immediate adjustment now, and again, the risks it presents to any of the corporate objectives and outcomes, which actually, from the face of it, seem quite limited. Malcolm, Councillor Granger, you've got your hand up.
I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I just want you to tell me how long has the Reedlands site been ongoing?
Well, if you mean how long has it been there and as a derelict site in the ownership of the council, I would guess it's the head workings of Solway Pit, basically.
All right, right.
So it's whenever Solway Pit closed, which I'm guessing it'd be about, off the top of my head, 1970.
It seems like it's been on the books for quite a long time.
Oh, aye. I think if we look at it, it's been sat there as a derelict site in the ownership of the council for about 50 years. And, you know, we really do need to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah.
What, you know, I don't know what that is, but we need to do something about it.
I just wondered how long it had been ongoing.
As a project,
yeah,
maybe 4 or 5 years. It was one of those things where you developed every other piece of land that you could conceivably develop for industrial uses in and around that part of Workington.
Yeah.
When everything else had been done, what was left was Reedlands Road. Well, you know, the reason why it was left is because it was the most difficult site. Nobody wanted to pick up old pit workings. It was always going to be a fraught and difficult site, but it turned out to be even more fraught and difficult than maybe people thought it was.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, just a short, just if I can come in, just to confirm that Councillor Buchanan Holmes has left the meeting.
I thought
as she's previously arranged with us.
I thought she did. She did give it. She did tell us she would. So
she did, yeah. Thank you.
That's fair enough, and thank you for her attendance. There's just one other thing. Track and trace, it says, page 54. Track and trace, middle of page 54, policy governance and pit resources, grant received to support the council's track and trace work. It's got a whole punch through my bit of paper. It looks like £90,000 on track and trace. And I would just make an observation.
96, Chair.
Right, okay, thank you. It's this council that's doing all the blooming work. The fact that we only get 96 grand out of the funding that's made available to local authorities for track and trace work leaves me a little bit less than overwhelmed.
Chair, I
Who's got all the money, Catherine?
I think that's the 96 up to that point. I think there is some further money. It's gone to the county council in effect, and we're in negotiation with the county council at the moment about further allocations for their amounts for track and trace.
Well, I think we would want to make sure that they recognise the fact that while they've got the money, we're doing all the work.
Yeah.
So that the financial settlement should reflect that. It's our public health people who are doing all the work. Okay, thank you. Anything else? I've got a question. I think Catherine might help me, or maybe I don't know. It looks like we've taken savings from the deletion, in effect, of the post of head of development services, which concerns me. That head of development services was you think it's an important position in the council, and I'm concerned that if we're actually in effect doing away with the post of development services when development and regeneration is one of our priorities, have we got that covered? Is there more of a story there? And the other one was, we're also taking the savings from the secondment of the ops manager to Allerdale Waste Services Limited. And again, I'd like some reassurance that I know one of the things the procurement task and finish report is going to say, even though we haven't got to it yet, and it's something I entirely agree with. Don't lose the capacity within your client operation to be able to hold your contractors to account. And it just concerns me that if we're losing operations manager capacity within the council as the client side of the operation, because that's gone to the delivery side of the operation, then who does that leave who's actually acting as the client and understands the business that Allerdale Waste Services are delivering for us? Because we need to have that capacity in-house, and I think that's one of the key lessons learned from the procurement task and finish group. But I don't think I'm saying anything there that needs to go into part two.
Apologies. So in terms of the head of development services, I can confirm that that's been funded from alternative sources of income in this financial year. Therefore, it's offered up a saving in the salaries budget. So that's just a 1 year. It's been funded through alternative.
So we're not losing the post. It's just not. It's just we've just found some money to fund it another way.
I think in terms of moving forward and the point you make about the operations manager, then I'll have to refer to the potential of the restructure and say no more.
Oh, right. That's intriguing. I didn't know about that, but never mind. Okay. No doubt we'll no doubt we'll get to hear about that. Anything else on this finance report? No? Okay, can we note that, and can we note the concerns expressed and the recommendations that that have been identified, and go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the forward plan. That's the forward plan produced by officers of key decisions or decisions that are going to be taken, scheduled to be taken by various council bodies, including the council itself and executive, over the next 6 months or so. That's there to give us an opportunity, if we see anything that is of concern, to decide to include it in the work programme of this committee before it gets to the point at which it's too late for us to make a difference, as it sometimes is. So if there's anything on that forward plan, and it doesn't seem a lot actually, that to me anyway, that we would want to have a look at before it comes to the point of where the decision's being made, then shout up. Or if it only occurs to you, in the shower tomorrow morning, then just circulate an email with your thoughts, if you can't think of anything now. Okay, can we go to the next item, which is the work programme 20, the current work programme that we're engaged in, which sets out what we've got coming up over the next few months. And apart from, I hope you'll agree to leave it to the co-chairs with support from the officers. If anything comes up that requires any of these items to be moved back or forward a meeting, rather than be deleted or added. But is there anything that you think we are missing in terms of the focus for overview and scrutiny for the rest of this council year? Please shout up. Again, if nothing occurs now, you think of it tomorrow, let us know.
Chair, might I add a thought to that as well, in that you've identified a few things this afternoon that you want further information on. Some of those may well be easiest handled as presentations to the committee. And so maybe there's a similar thought that some things might have to be reduced or deferred to allow space to be created in the programme. So again, perhaps if members are happy, that could be agreed by yourself and your co-chair.
Are members happy with that? Okay. I've got a couple of items I know we need to schedule. Obviously, one is this policy framework and strategy plans and strategies and how they work and what the decision-making processes are, together with the performance management framework that Nick's going to give us a report on at some point when that's ready to go. We've noted that. There will be a point at which beyond the initial submission on local government reorganisation, there will no doubt come a point where, when the government has decided what it's going to do, it will require us, no doubt, to produce a plan or strategy, probably, for effectively winding up the operation, if we're going to get abolished, and transferring functions elsewhere. At some point, we need to, I think, consider that as a policy issue in this committee. But who knows? Depends on the timescale. Maybe not before April. Who knows? May go into next year. And also, the dreaded issue, which has been going on for almost as long as I can remember, and it'll probably go on for another 100 years, of the disposal or long-term storage of radioactive waste materials. I know that the executive has stuck a tentative toe in the water, not suggesting that Allerdale Council area be a site, but somebody, another organisation within Allerdale, has suggested a site in Allerdale as a potential location. They're in discussions with the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, and Allerdale Council has the option of taking part in those discussions, if only to find out what the hell's going on, because the only way you find out what's going on, because the commercial in confidence between the landowner and the NDA is to actually take part in the process at this stage. If it goes any further than that, then it does become a public process. But I think we need to put in the programme maybe sometime after April. Don't quite know when. We can take advice on when, that we need to look at this radioactive waste issue again, to just to keep an eye on what the executive is up to and what people are doing in our area. And if there are any other ideas, I'm happy to receive them. And again, if it only occurs to you tomorrow, don't worry, just send it in by email. Okay, agreed. Can we go on to, right, now we're coming to the verbal update from the budget and pandemic response task and finish groups. Well, can I give a quick update on the budget task and finish group? Because I was there, I can't remember who chaired it. If anybody actually did, I don't know. Remind me who chaired it, Ian?
I'm afraid
I think it was you. Was you?
Was it? Oh, I don't know. One day blurs into another. Right, the budget task and finish group has had a presentation for which we're very grateful from Catherine on how the budget building process works, how you actually put a budget together, starting from last year and going through all the factors that you need to take into account to get in the budget for next year. So I think there's a better understanding of that process now. There's the medium-term financial plan, and then there's all the stuff that appears in this finance report that we've already looked at a couple of elements from, which will need to be picked up in the budget task and finish group, because that informs the way the budget's being put together. And there'll be a meeting of that very shortly.
And if you remember, Chair, the process that you agreed is that the budget task and finish group will mirror the budget review group, so that the official process is going to go on, and you as a group will receive the same information and go through the same process independently to see if the conclusions are the same, to test the robustness of the process that is being used.
Right, so we will shadow the officers and executive members through that process.
No, I think what we agreed was that the packs, so the packs would go to the budget review group, and so we would have the budget beads, and they go through a red, amber, green system, if you remember. So red, not approved, green, happy to support, amber, requiring further information. So after those budget review group meetings, you could have then a copy of that pack, and it was to see, so a few of those beads, have they followed the correct process? Do they, tick the boxes? Do they match the priorities, etc.? Do they sit with the risk appetite? And in the same circumstances, would you score it the same in effect?
Yeah, do it. I mean, I suppose they can score it how they want to, because they might have a different approach with it. But what we need to check is, do we understand?
Yeah.
Is the process by which they've reached that decision one that's robust and sound? We might not agree with it, but have they taken the decision in the right way, considering all the factors they need to consider? And that's the issue for us. Thanks, Catherine. Pandemic. Well, we've made one report to executive, which I've mentioned, particularly about the importance of ensuring our public health, environmental health people are adequately resourced. And one thing this pandemic has shown is that public health is actually what district councils were set up to do. Going back to the Victorian legislation, so many of our functions, whether it be housing, planning, waste and recycling, or whatever, at origin are about public health. Derived from public health. And it's only when you get into a pandemic like this we've been in that you realise how important public health is, what an important role Allerdale Council plays in public health, even if we don't call it that anymore. The days of having the medical officer in health in the council structure in charge of most things are long gone, and maybe that's a miss, but never mind. So we've done that. We also had a presentation from Suzanne Wilson, one of the research fellows at UCLan Westlakes, on the impact of the pandemic on children and families, particularly the impact on child poverty. And she's going to do another presentation before she goes off on maternity leave, again on child poverty, but also on community, the impact of poverty of COVID on communities and community resilience. So that should be interesting. Referring to some work she's actually done in I think in more close. She's also done some work in Whitehaven in Wooders, but she's also done some work in more close. And the output of that was very interesting in terms of community resilience. So that actually ties in with another piece of work that we'll be looking at when Nick and Alex bring the resilient communities work back to us. So that's basically what they've been up to. Is any questions? That agreed? Can we move on? Now, at this point in the meeting, because we're talking about stuff that I was actually involved in making decisions about, and a decision maker can't be involved in scrutinising his own decisions. So I'm at this point going to hand over the chair to Councillor Ian Graney, leave the meeting, and hope you all have a good weekend.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Cheers, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, as Mike alluded to, he has to leave the meeting at this point. We're going to move on to item 10 on the actual agenda, which is being moved further down the agenda. That's a strategic commissioning and procurement strategy action plan, and that's on pages 103 to 102. And I believe, is Barbara going to give us a brief presentation on that?
Hello, sorry about that. I'll just give you a brief kind of overview, but it was basically following the task group that I was actually part of, part of your questioning. Can't even speak. The strategic commissioning and procurement strategy came about as part of that review. We have circulated a report, I believe. I don't actually have the pack, the agenda pack and everything, so I haven't seen that, so sorry. Yeah.
I can step in if you like, Barbara.
Can you? That's fine. Sorry, I don't have the details.
Thanks, Brenda.
Councillors, this is an update from the procurement service. You might remember back in March having input into the draft strategic commissioning and procurement strategy prior to its approval by the executive in March. Views were sought in terms of aligning what we do as procurement with our strategic objectives as a council, and the scrutiny members had some very useful input which made its way into that strategy. You'll see that it's a 10-year strategy that aligns with the delivery of the council strategy, and that is by design. Included within the strategy is a commitment by the council to produce an annual plan, and that will be done at the start of each year from the 1st of April, and for scrutiny to be involved in that process at least twice a year. So the thinking was at the time, and what was agreed, is that annual plan time around March, April, scrutiny could be involved in setting that and making sure that it covers the sorts of things that are important to you. And then we would review progress against those agreed actions midway through the year, which is what we're doing today. You'll see as an appendix to the document the action plan for the year from page 109 onwards, sets out a number of actions set against those council strategic priorities, and then in the column on the right hand side is an update up to this point in the year. So I'm sure you'll have read it. I'm sure you'll recall your involvement in it, and by all means feel free to discuss, and if you need any assistance from officers, then we'll be able to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Brendan. At this point, I want to take any questions from members on the report. I don't have any questions as such coming in. What I'll tend to move then is that we move to consideration of the report of the procurement task and finish group and see if there's anything within this that is relevant to the previous report that we've just witnessed, if that's okay, given that we should be able to take both of them at the same time. And it might provoke a bit more questions, should we say.
Chair, to move it into part 2, there's the statement on the agenda.
Right, have we not moved into part 2 then, Lee?
Not at this moment. If you can just,
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, thank you.
No problem. The chair will move that under section 184 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Schedule 12A of the Act. That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. It doesn't appear to be any objections to that, so we will move into part